I was so Americanized and so into my own comfort. I was so into myself and just promoting my ministry, and just the view was so distorted from the original gospel. That international go into the world and preach the gospel and feed the hungry, clothe the naked, all of those different things. I didn't have a revelation of that. It was very just, I'm going to preach to church people. How long are we going to just throw fireballs at each other and we all fall out? We get up the same and nothing has happened in the world. No contribution from heaven has been deposited into the earth. When you've experienced the life of these kids, when you come into contact with them, it's almost like you don't have a choice, because now you're accountable to what you know.
Welcome back to the Rendered Hope Podcast. I'm your host, Philip Carroll, and I'm so excited for this episode. Today, I sit down with my friend, Apostle Jordan Brice-Conway, as we discuss some of the things going on in his life, some of the experience he's had in the global mission field, the need for domestic missions, and even what the Lord is doing through people in areas of need. So, once again, if you do not follow us, you can find us here on YouTube. You can find us on Spotify. Give us a like, leave a comment, let us know what you're thinking, and if you like the episode, just, leave a comment, let him know. I'm sure he'll be reading these comments. And without further ado, join me in welcoming Apostle Jordan Brice-Conway. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How you doing, man?
Pretty good. I'm excited to talk to you. We've been trying to line this up for like a year now.
Yes.
And just because of, distance and time and schedules, it's been kind of hard to get a hold of you. So I just decided I would throw this into your schedule on your behalf.
Yes.
So here we are.
You're so far away. You're like so far down the hallway. What a walk.
Just crazy. So what I wanted to talk to you about today, there's a lot of topics that I've explored on this podcast, being mental health and experiences and people's faith journeys. What I wanted to talk to you today was something that a lot of people don't really have the awareness of. I think a lot of us have an idea of, humanitarian needs, but I really wanted to just talk about the world, right? You've been doing some traveling. You've gone to different countries over the last 2 years, specifically a few trips to Africa, and seeing the needs of the people and seeing the quite frankly, the luxuries we have as people living in the United States. No matter how bad we have it, as long as you have a roof over your head and things of that nature. So just for the people who don't know you, could you just introduce yourself and all of that good stuff?
Yeah, my name is Jordan Brice. I am the senior leader and founder of Nova Hub Church in Woodbridge, Virginia. I'm actually Philip's pastor, even though I don't pastor him much, but I just loved saying that I'm his pastor, or his pastor. There we go. So I've been leading a church for 7 years now, and I've been in ministry. This September will have been 15 years of active ministry. And I've had the wonderful opportunity of traveling around America, but even more significantly, around the world, preaching the gospel, teaching and training leaders in the supernatural, and just fulfilling this great commission that Jesus has given us. And so, me and Philip here work in tandem, work together to do what God has called us to do. And I'm happy to be here.
Man, 15 years, you got me beat by 8 months.
Really?
Yeah, for me, I just hit 14.
Wow.
So when it comes to, back to the topic at hand, when it comes to seeing the world and observing the cultures and the needs and even the advancements of other societies, in relation to the way you were raised, the way you grew up, and even what you're comfortable with now, what would you say are the biggest takeaways you've had just from these experiences?
The biggest takeaway that I would say, one, is that the world, or internationally, they are way more open to the gospel and to God in general than what most people are in America. I find it very interesting. If you were to tell me, Jordan, go stand on a street corner and preach the gospel in New York or DC or DMV where we live, I wouldn't help but to feel a little nervous. I mean, I could do it, but the biggest thing I would think about is the receptivity of people, um, as to what I'm saying, even though we could do it anyways, right? But if I were to go to Mexico, go anywhere in Africa, where the poverty is greater, or go anywhere else in the world, pretty much the receptivity of the gospel, of the truth, or just preaching in general, or God itself himself, is way more open than here in America. And so that's been very impactful to me. Another thing that's been very impactful is the need. America poverty is so different from international poverty. You know, to say I have, and there are cases, there are cases to cases, situations, right? Some people are legitimately homeless with no food, nowhere to go, nothing to wear, and such. But the average person in America that's considered to be impoverished, is to say that they still most likely have a place to stay tonight. They most likely have climate control, right? And though not the best food, they have access to some kind of food, whatever have you, whether through a program or whether through knowing somebody or food stamps or whatever have you. But poverty in other parts of the world is poverty, as in they don't know where their next meal is coming from. They don't know where they're sleeping tonight. They don't have any climate control, none of these things. And that's been definitely impactful to me, because I've seen that the need is greater around the world than it is here in America, even though there is a need here in the States.
I think something that's so powerful, something we've spoken about before, but even when you look at the statistics and not seeing the people attached to the numbers, you almost become numb, right? To the
Hmm.
idea that if you make over $30,000, which is well under minimum wage, you're in the top 10%, 2%, 3% of the world in terms of income.
Yeah.
And I think when you become desensitized, it almost becomes like a cliche, when you see programs like $10 a month can feed this many families. But when you go to these places and you start to see the need and even the gratitude at something that we would consider to be secondhand or trash, you give
Hmm.
it to them and it's like you change their whole life. And it just
Hmm.
goes to show how big the need is. One thing you said to me and that I observed from your last trip to Africa was that you almost didn't want to come home, right?
Yeah.
Because of what you've experienced, and even talking about the hunger for the gospel and the need to preach the gospel and the reception of it. What would you say, in your opinion, is the reason they're so receptive and open to hearing about Jesus?
One of the things I feel that separates Africa from America is the desperation for God to come through. I've noticed that Americans have a lot more options as it relates to what and who they can depend on, whether it's healthcare, whether it's other religions, or you know doctors. There are just so many options here in America, but in Africa, certain diseases that we could take chemo for, get a pill for, get antibiotics for in particular parts, like the slums of Kenya, or the slums of Accra, anywhere that I've been. The A lot of these things can be considered at times a death sentence to them, because there is no government program that I know of, that I've seen. And so a lot of them, a simple pill is just not affordable. They're not able to obtain it, or the technology at their hospitals or within their medicinal system is not capable to sustaining them and taking care of them. And I'll tell you this story. I remember we went to the teaching hospital in Accra, Ghana, and what really broke my heart was walking to the children's cancer ward, and to watch this one little girl. They said, we're pretty much just trying to keep her comfortable until she dies. And purple, some kind of cancer was coming out of her ears. It was showing up in her fingernails. Her body was eaten up by cancer. And to think, here, simple chemo could have stopped this from progressing to how aggressive it became in her body. And to think if this little girl was born in America, she would have a much greater fighting chance at life, you know? Um, and so that really marked me. It really drove me to say, like, okay, what can I do? And I would say, going back to your original question, I'm sorry I went on a tangent, but what really made me not want to come back home was, one, the need is so great. It's almost as if whatever little contribution you make over there, it still isn't enough. I hope that makes sense. It's like,
Absolutely.
I helped this person, but I wasn't able to help this person. And if I had a few more days, I could probably help this person. Or if I went home and raised some money, I could help this whole section of people in the hospital over here. And the need is so great. Every big contribution is like a drop in the bucket of need, you know? Um, Not only that, the receptivity to the gospel. Well, one, the miracles, and we believe in healing and miracles, right? So the miracles that God was doing over there were so profound and so easy because of the faith of the people and their desperation. Their desperation brought them to a place of faith where God just started breaking out of miracles. Miracles that we consider a big deal, and they are a big deal. When God heals, it's a big deal, and we thank God for it. But miracles that we would be like screaming and hollering for, like, oh my God, of biblical proportions, were happening like clockwork every time we prayed. Deaf ears was nothing over there. Blind eyes were popping open. People were, their bodies were uncrippling. And to watch this one girl, she had some aggressive form of diabetes and a lung disease where she could barely breathe for months. And the diabetes, she could not swallow food or water without excruciating pain just going down her body. With a 30-second prayer, she drank a whole bottle of water with no pain, and she was breathing normal. To watch a man who had cystic fibrosis all over his lungs in prison, who could barely breathe, immediately healed, to go to the doctors, and the doctors are asking, what happened to this man? You know, these are not things that we commonly see in America, and we're contending for these things in America. But I can't help but to think it is the lack of faith and the options that the people have that almost stop God from moving at the magnitude that He would love to move in America, as it's opposed to over there. So over there, it's like, man, I'm seeing God so clearly touch people. Why would I want to go back to life as usual? You know?
Yeah, what's crazy, even what I thought about as you shared that, is so often we contend for miracles and these things, these deliverances, and these crazy things, and it's really just so that we could see them. A lot of people contend for these things just because they want to be involved. But over there,
Mm,
it's like, hey, if this person's not healed, they might not wake up tomorrow.
right.
And I think it's this desperation and it's this hunger, not just to be healed, but to like fight for the next day is not something that we're necessarily used to. And
Yeah,
even going over there and seeing such tragedies that could be prevented, what if your $10 is the thing that delivers that medicine? And I think
absolutely.
what's so important about missions and worldwide humanitarian care is you don't need a degree to do it. You don't need
No.
to be qualified to do it. Sometimes you don't even need a big bank account to do it. All you
Mm-mm.
need to do is just be available.
Yeah.
Sometimes all you need to do is just go and trust in God to either provide for you or through the organization that you're with or things of that nature. I mean, that leads me to my next question. We had a meeting today and about a program and something that you've recently gotten um, associated with, being
Yes.
Compassion International. Um, what is some of the motivation you have and what makes you so excited to be partnered with this organization?
Well, honestly, it's one thing to go fill out an envelope to say, I'm gonna, yeah, put a little $40 a month, $45 a month to feed this kid who doesn't have access to food like me. But it's different when you've played soccer with the kids, you know?
Yeah.
It's different when you've picked the kids up and held them. It's different when you've looked at their parents who didn't have any options to buy the medicine for whatever terminal disease they have, and when you've experienced the life of these kids, when you've come into contact with them, it's almost like you don't have a choice because now you're accountable to what you know. Does that make sense? And Philip, our church and our movement, we're what you would call apostolic and prophetic. We're Christians, obviously, but we lean more towards the apostolic and prophetic. And Philip, I got so tired of laying hands, prophesying, training, and equipping people who don't even want to go down the street and minister to somebody. I got so tired of saying we want to change the world and not changing the world, and bringing this gospel. And I just refuse to believe that all this deliverance, casting out demons and healing the sick and prophesying and laying hands and all this stuff is just for us to minister to people who look like us, who are at the same economic status as us, who really won't do as much with it. But I believe God gave me power for the nations. And one of the things that rings out to me, that says, after that the Holy Ghost has come upon you, you will receive power to be my witnesses unto Judea, Samaria, and the uttermost parts of the earth. And so the reason why I am filled with the Holy Ghost is so that I can be a witness of Jesus to the uttermost parts of the earth. So if that's Philippines, if that's Kenya, if that's Ghana, if that's South Africa, if that's Brazil, Puerto Rico, wherever God sends me, I want to be a witness of the testimony of Jesus Christ, that he is yet alive and that he cares about the disenfranchised and that he cares about those who feel like nobody else in the world cares about them. And so this is one of the reasons why I'm happy to be a part of Compassion, because now I'm able to get boots on the ground and be a part of something that is actually feeding children and doing another component of what Jesus Christ has called us to do as his disciples. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited to be a part of them, because I get to join a mission that's bigger than my ministry. This is not about JBC Ministries or Nova Hub Church or my Apostolic Alliance. This is about fulfilling and being a vital component about as a part of what Jesus has already commanded us to do.
I think what's so important is, as you said, it's not just about contributing your funds and sending it off, but it's really like, hey, when you sign up, this is the person it's going to. This is the face behind the name. This is your opportunity to make a real difference in a real person.
Yeah.
And I know I sponsor a few children, and I know you sponsor at least one child.
Mhm.
What did it do for you, your heart, your spirit, your mind, when you made that commitment and began to see him, and even the updates, or seeing how his life is beginning to unfold, in part because of your contribution? How did that affect you,
Well, firstly,
just at your core?
firstly, my child is a girl, and I have adopted her as my goddaughter from across the world. But honestly, I'm not gonna lie. When I first saw her face on the envelope or her picture, I immediately fell in love. I'm like, this is mine. I just knew this is the girl that God wants me to take care of. And so, she got a goddaddy in America, and pretty much it wasn't even like the, oh, good job, Jordan, you feel good about yourself, you did your charity for the day or for the week or whatever have you. It's more like a thing of like the weighty responsibility. I'm ready for the challenge to do what I have to do to help you, you know? And I honestly just want the girl to have the right perception of Jesus. I want her to grow up. And even if she never gets to physically meet me, I hope to meet her one day in person. But if she never gets to run into me and meet me, um, I more so want her to look at this program that has fed her, taken care of her until she was 18, and to see it as the provision and the providing hand of God, the providing hand of Jesus Christ that has been in her life, so that she'll walk with the Lord in her older years. So that's honestly why I'm doing it. That's what it feels. I feel like I am representing Jesus Christ to this girl. and letting her know that he individually cares about her and her life, you know?
Yeah, and I just want to take this time to give a shout out to my two boys, Romel and Dodgy. You know, y'all the real ones.
I can't pronounce mine's name. It starts with a S, S-Y. It's a long Middle Eastern name, and I can't pronounce it, but I love her.
There you go. So for just as a quick aside, if you'd like to sponsor your own child, there will be a link in the description. If you have any questions, you can just check out the Compassion website. You can partner with us as we partner with Compassion, and make your own individual impact in that way. When it comes to serving these needs, I'm sure if we were to ask you 10 years ago, if you'd find yourself going from country to country and leaving your apartment and leaving your home and putting yourself at the risk of these nations where you might not even speak the language, what do you think your 20-year-old self would have said?
No, 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 no. I would have said no to these nations, no to walking around the slums, no to hot weather, no to flies and chickens and carrying on. No, 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 because my perception of ministry was very Americanized. Um, it was very itinerant. It was very, and I still do itinerant ministry in America and around the world. But like, it was very just, I'm going to preach to church people, equipping and train them. But over time, God just began to expose me to there being more. And I'll tell you this. Years ago, the Lord said something to me. He said, "Jordan, I'm going to break you off the American circuit." Because how long are we going to just throw fireballs at each other and we all fall out and we get up the same and nothing has happened in the world? No contribution from heaven has been deposited into the earth. And so I was so Americanized and so into my own comfort at 21 years old, at 20 years old. Oh, I was so into myself and just promoting my ministry and just like my view was so distorted from the original gospel. I've always had a passion for folks to get saved, but that international go into the world and preach the gospel and feed the hungry, clothe the naked, all of those different things. I didn't have a revelation of that. And so I would have never thought I'd be doing. I was also very much so a black man. So I don't do outside. I don't do outside. And honestly, I still have to get over my own comfort. When I go to these places, I have to mentally prepare myself for where I'm going because there's AC in my house. It's it's 69 degrees right now in this room right now. And the AC is pumping. Uh, there's running water that's drinkable, you know? And so I still have to prepare myself because of the luxuries that I'm giving here in America. But love compels us to go. And I think the more I have fallen in love with Jesus, the more I have fallen in love with his heart. And I've grown in love with him. I loved him then, but I surely did not love him then the way that I love him now because his love is what compels me to go. So,
Yeah, and before we continue, I want to reiterate this isn't necessarily us telling you that you need to stop what you're doing and book
yeah.
a flight. Quite frankly, a lot of you should not do that. But I
And
think
some of you are
what's
being called to Indonesia. Go, go,
Yup.
go, go.
I think the important message is that we want to communicate here is that there is a need, whether it's in a different country, whether it's down the street, whether it's even in your own household. I think so often we become so comfortable with storing for ourselves and finding our own comforts and finding our hobbies and finding our friend groups that we allow others to quite frankly die because of our lack of action. Even the word says,
Yeah.
you know pray that laborers are sent into the harvest. And I think what becomes so stagnant within ourselves is we become almost obsessed with the idea of being perfect. I'm not
Mm,
ready to do this. I don't have a heart for it yet. But sometimes it's the going, right? You might
yeah,
be on vacation. Your first assignment came because you were sitting on a beach, and some people
absolutely.
discovered that you were in the area. Can you tell us a little bit about that story?
Yeah, so actually, there's a family in our church. You know them, Hernandezes. I love them deeply. They're Puerto Rican, and so their whole family pretty much got recommitted to the Lord, started serving in our church, and it was just amazing. Like it was like a family revival for them. and they're all on staff. Pretty much, most of them are on staff. They are serving very closely to staff at this point today. And I remember as a thank you, Vixamar, who I raised up with, who I disciple now, he said, "I just want to take you to Puerto Rico on vacation. You need a vacation." And I remember thinking, I would love to go on vacation. I would love to go to Puerto Rico. And he was offering to pay. So I said, shoot, you paying for my plane ticket? I'm coming. And so we went out there. And when I got out there, the Lord told me just to be open. And I said, Lord, what does that mean? I'm not here to be
I'm on
open to,
vacation.
I'm on vacation, God. I've worked hard, And the Lord just said, be open. And the Lord said, when we get there, I just want you to contact this couple. They're in ministry. They've been following my ministry for some time now. But I was thinking, oh, I know them. Let me just get some lunch with them when I land. And so I get there. We get lunch. They were at the time youth pastors. And they said, we've already told our pastor about you. I said, that's nice. Why for? He said, they want to know if you can come Sunday. And I said, oh, unfortunately, I'm unavailable. And I don't preach on vacation. And they just kept on pressing. And then I started coming under the conviction of the Holy Spirit. And I ended up preaching that Sunday. And I ended up ministering and prophesying to the largest church on the island the next day after that, or the 2 days after that, to the point where I extended my stay because God was calling me to the island of Puerto Rico. And this time I'm actually prepping to go to a women's prison. Now I'm preaching. I'm actually getting ready to go, but I'm going to be preaching at a women's prison and going to an orphanage soon, I think, soon as well. But, that whole experience opened up the nations to me to the extent where, I've been to Brazil now. I've been to Africa 3 times at this point. And, just doing the work of the kingdom. We've already been to Mexico some years ago. And, that's how it all opened up to me. Just being available and open to the Lord. I was on vacation and God redirected me. And so, you don't have to get a GoFundMe account and, you know, and raise all this money and go build huts in Africa to say you've been on a mission trip. But God could take you in passing. Also, one of the things the Lord has really been dealing with me about, if I can mention this, Philip, is domestic missions as well. And I know we're talking about international missions, but, we pass homeless shelters all the time. We
Hmm.
go through areas where the need is so great. I was just this past weekend in Camden, New Jersey, and I said, shoot, people want to be missionaries. This is a mission field right now. All the drug infestation, the people who are homeless out here, who need food, who need the gospel, who just need love. And sorry about that notification. But so much that that's needed out here. And so uh, listen, it's all about just being open to the Holy Spirit. And as you're open to the Holy Spirit, He'll provide the opportunities.
Yeah, even as if you're listening to this on the day it comes out, you'll actually be on your way to Puerto Rico for your next trip. And
Yes.
and I think so often, again, it's like, we see people plan their trip, which is great, but sometimes you just gotta open your eyes to see what's around you, right? You
Yes.
mentioned your trip to Camden, New Jersey, and we used to be located near a trailer park where we saw a lot of need.
Yeah.
So that's just my encouragement to you guys listening, that there's always an opportunity to make a difference. There's always an opportunity, and not to think, something you said the other day, not to think so much about how the money you share or the goods that you provide, how it's used, but trusting that you're making a difference. And
Hmm.
even not just for yourself, but for those who observe you, for those who you bring along with you. And as we begin to wind down this episode, what are some of the things that you think you're going to be used for in the next 12 to 24 months as it pertains to both domestic and international um, hospitality and aid?
Well, one of the things, and this, Philip, is I've actually got involved in investing, but the investing is not just for the growth of my personal finances. I've gotten involved in investing and growing my ministry's money to be able to go to these places. So one of the things that I plan on doing is doing a huge crusade in Accra, Ghana, very soon. Because I want to get souls saved, but I also want to train pastors and leaders over there. But as well, I want to give out food. I want to be a blessing to those local communities and supply need. And so I'll be doing that. We'll be doing a crusade in Pakistan as well, doing the exact same thing, getting souls saved. And yeah, there's a lot of preemptive travel that has been set into place, but not in stone just because of finances and stuff like that. But we're growing them, and I'm going by faith. But yeah, and also, we're actually getting ready to rebuild our outreach team at the church and really begin to reach out to people and get folks saved and get some food things going on. We have several connections in our church that God has sent over the last few months, that we are able to have access to a pantry here in the Northern Virginia area, and so I'm grateful for that. But for me, it's all hands on deck. I believe the Lord is going to use us for another degree of miracles, healing, signs, and wonders to get people healed and to know that the gospel is real, but also to improve their quality of life, set feeding programs into place, all kind of stuff. We're still kind of in the planning stages. Life has been moving so fast. Ministry has been moving so fast. A lot of warfare, a lot of things been going on. A lot of things warfare is going on. But I believe that the enemy has been fighting us to get to this point because he knows once we get to this point where we are stable to be able to do all these things for the kingdom, we're going to put a big dent in hell and plunder hell of its goods and resources, which are people. So I'm excited about that.
Okay, last question is we got a conference coming up about a month from now.
Yeah.
Tell the people about that conference and why they should get signed up.
So I've had many conferences. You've planned and done
A
many of
few.
those conferences, Philip. But the Lord spoke to me and said, and I had this thing in my spirit a few years ago, where like 5 years ago, where the Lord said to me, I just want a gathering where people come and love me. People just come and experience my presence, and they come after me for several days. And the Lord impressed upon my spirit a conference called Jesus Lovers, where we don't come with an agenda. We have an apostolic and prophetic conference called Architect. We've had glory conferences, Kabod. We call that COVID conference because everybody got COVID. But this conference is all about renewing your love for the Lord, growing in the knowledge of Him, receiving the spirit of wisdom and revelation that you would know the hope of His calling. Um, just figuring out who Jesus is. There hasn't been one Jesus Lovers where I did not leave more on fire and in love with the person of Jesus Christ. And so it's I like that people it's less of a conference and more of a summer revival. We're going to see healing, deliverance, the prophetic flow, but it- all in all, it's a revival. So if you feel yourself getting lukewarm or if you feel yourself becoming losing that passion, Jesus Lovers is that conference for you. Or if you just want to be stirred up even the more, it's the conference for you. So we make sure we've lowered the price. We still have to pay for expenses and stuff and such, but it's going to be a life-changing event. So I really encourage you register for that. I think it's jl25.eventbrite.com. Register for that. It's going to be a life-changing experience. You won't be the same.
Yep. So if you're free, look, June 26th to the 28th, around in the Dulles, Virginia area, come. Feel free to sign up, get involved. Night sessions are free. You can find information for that in the description. So as we sign off, just let the people know how they can find you, where they can follow you, and how they can keep up with what you're doing.
Well, on Instagram, I'm Jordan A. Brice. On Facebook, JBC Ministries. On YouTube, Apostle Jordan Brice. And yeah, that's how you find me. I have a ministry cell app thing to keep up with me on. It's 571-901-1803. That's 571-901-1803, I think. Um, and you can text me there, and I might even text you back. We give out updates, but we can send individual texts. So join me on that. And yeah, that's how you find me. And if you can't find me, just find Philip. He always finds me.
Yeah, just leave a YouTube comment, and we'll get you a direct access to his apartment.
Absolutely not.
Awesome. Look, thank you so much for joining me. I'm sure I'll have you on very soon
Mhm.
in the next year or two. Um, and as we sign off, again, thank you. Do you have any words you'd like to share on your way out today?
Jesus is Lord.
Awesome. Thank you again for joining us for this episode of the Rendered Hope podcast. My name is Philip Carroll, and that was my episode with Jordan Brice-Conway. If you'd like to get involved with anything that we spoke about, all of the links will be in the description, whether you are on YouTube or Spotify. Once again, leave a thumbs up, leave a like, leave a follow, subscribe to the channel, and keep up. We are every week moving forward, and I will see you next week for the next episode of the Rendered Hope podcast.